Yeah, with these four teams, because I feel like there's a tier, but there's an end of the tier and there's a beginning of the tier. I think the Pelicans are the beginning of the tier.
Yep.
Mavericks are the end of the tier. Which team do you think the Kings are closer to? Because we're only talking four teams right here, so it's a smaller group. But like, I feel like the Pelicans, like, I trust them more than I trust the Mavericks.
Yeah, so I think it's funny. Like the Pelicans, although they've thumped the Kings every time, I think if I were gonna rate these teams, I would start with Phoenix, and then I would go Sacramento, and then it would be maybe Dallas, and then the Pelicans.
Oh, so you go the Pelicans at the end?
I would
Maybe, yeah,
be
maybe I'm just so used to them being up on the Kings then.
yeah, but I think that's why because you can say, well, they beat up the Kings, so they're a better team, but again, the Kings are 2-0 against Dallas, and the Kings are 2-1 against Phoenix. And I guarantee you that's not going to be the case if you look at Phoenix's record against the Pelicans, and if you look at the Pelicans' record against Dallas. There's no way that they're that much better because again, they're all around the same point in the standings. They're both, all of them are around the 32 wins and 22 losses. So yeah, even if I look it up really fast, let's see, where are they at against the Suns? Am I going to be able to even pull this up quickly? Or
And I guess like taking that question too, it's more so are the Kings, it's like a 5-6 team, do you think, or the 7-8 team?
I've always thought the Kings are more of a 5-6. Like I thought they would live in the 4-5-6. So yeah, and the Pelicans are 0-1 against the Suns, and they are 2-2 against the Mavs on the season. So again, they're all beating up each other, right? If I'm gonna choose like where I think the Kings should finish, I think the Kings should finish around 5 or 6. Where they will finish, I have no idea because what I've seen so far, especially in the month of January and early February, I don't like what I see. I don't like the team that I see.
Yeah, I don't either. I think calling it right now, like they're not who they were last year, I think.
No, they're not. No, no, and I think that's gonna be one of the biggest questions, right? So last year at this time, the Sacramento Kings were almost in the exact same spot, right? Record wise, I think it's within a game, or maybe it is the same record. And not only that, but I've talked about this where they hit a switch in the second half and they just rolled, right? So the Kings did a great job of finishing the season. And that's kind of not where I thought that I didn't think that would happen, number one. But also I thought that they were playing better going into this, and they weren't. Last year the Kings were like 6-7 in their last 15 games heading into the break. This year the Kings are 7-8 in their last 15 games heading into the break. Like, we have to see what they do in the next 2 games. Hopefully, you'd at least
Make it
get a
look a
split.
little nicer, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a split would be huge. Like, winning both games would be amazing, but at least a split would get you to the point where, over your last 17 games going into the break, you're like 8-9. If you lose both these games and you're like 7-10 in your last 17 games, that's not good.
7-10 in your last 17 games, and like you just lost the game to Phoenix, but you're just battling. Yeah, no one, like, there's plenty not to feel good about too.
Yeah, I think that there's a ton. Even if you come out and start playing really well, and then the Kings did, amazing stuff coming out of the break last year. That's where they really, really feasted, and I think they finished, was it 16-9 in the second half? But realistically, it was 16-6 because they just kind of cashed in the last 3 games. They were making sure that they're healthy, and to me, that's a big deal, right? So that can they in their final, what are they going to have left? Because as of right now, they've got 30 in their final 28 games. Can they go? I don't know. Again, you'd want to see. I don't think you can go 20-8.
What do you think? 17-11.
17-11. Does that do anything?
Mm.
That's not great. I mean, it's good, but I don't know that it gets you.
I don't see a 20-8 team. I'll be real with you.
Yeah,
I don't.
I don't either. And that's kind of what it's going to take if you're going to be a 5-6 seed.
It's almost coming
So
out the break. They're gonna have to prove us wrong. Not more so we're waiting to see what they're gonna do, but just like, oh, like, can they do? But just more so that you're gonna have to prove us wrong from what we've seen. Because I feel pretty comfortable about this team. I think
yeah,
about what who they are.
I think I am too, as of right now. I think if they come out with a different energy in the second half, but every team gets a week off here. And I'm sure that every team has a player or two that looks like they're struggling to get to the break and struggling to get to that moment and need this like this breather as much as anyone. I don't think, Fox is alone in that. I think the biggest difference is Fox is a Kings best or second best player, top two player. And that's why we kind of see it more and we feel it more. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think too, coming out the break, and we talk about the final 28 games for the season. My goal for them, honestly, finish 5 or 6. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be able to reach that tier with the top 4 teams right there. But if they were to able to finish at the 5 or 6 seed, the rest at coming out then the season, I think we come out the season where it's like, okay, yeah, they did something right. The second part.
Okay. And then if you're looking at the top four, like I think Minnesota is continues to play well, right? And their win over the Clippers, they've put up a couple of straight wins here, but their win over the Clippers it's a win that like gives you a little bit of breathing room again. They're a game and a half up on Denver, who's a 4 seed, but Denver and the Clippers are tied in a virtual tie, and they're a game up on OKC for the number 2 seed. So Minnesota's holding tough, and their defense, to be honest, is still holding tough. They're
One of
only
the few teams who still play defense in the league.
no, they're the only team. It's not one of the few teams. Well, I guess Cleveland and New York are both under 110 points per game
Yeah,
that
New
they're
York's
giving
always
up.
in there.
But the 107 per game from Minnesota is pretty stunning. Um, but if I'm looking at these guys, like I could easily see Oklahoma coming back down to earth. They play really hard. They're very, very talented, but they're also very young. They haven't been there before. I think that there could be a concern about them in the second half of the season because they haven't been to this position before. They're kind of like the Kings of last year, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely a world in which I could see them like sort of falling back.
Okay, all right, let me turn that around then. You could see them falling back, but can you see any of those other teams in that next tier kind of like making a run to kind of move up into that tier, like maybe a Phoenix, Pelicans, the Kings?
Yeah, I definitely could see Phoenix going on a run where they're just monsters and they're cranking up and getting ready for the playoffs. Yeah, I think again for me, if you look at this stretch of games that the Kings are in right now, like it's really brutal. They had like an 8-game stretch here where most teams are playoff teams, most teams are really, really good teams, and you're going to struggle to get wins. Like if you were to split and go 4-4 over like this 8-game stretch that they're in the middle of, I think you would have done well. And I don't know that they can do that. But we start with Denver and then OKC that they already did, and then Phoenix and Denver, and then they come out of the break. I think they have the Spurs, then they have something like Denver again, Minnesota, and then one other high quality team, which I'm not
It's
remembering.
not so much the tough stretches of games where you're playing, like you said, you just drew it out right there with a bunch of good teams coming up. It's not that scares me. It's because I know the Kings can compete. It's more so the Kings that scare you coming up. I feel like just more so like I know you can compete with these teams. I know you can get wins, but it's just, are you going to?
Yeah, are you going to? But no, I mean that's a question. But again, okay, so we get Phoenix, Denver, the Spurs, the Clippers, the Heat, the Nuggets, Timberwolves. Then you go into another group of games where okay, this is where if you're going to make a move, this is where you do it. It's in early March. It's a Bulls, Lakers, Spurs, Rockets, Bucks, Lakers, Knicks, Grizzlies, Raptors, Wizards, Magic. Like that's a group of games, like a 10-game stretch where maybe even 12-game stretch where you could start to make some headway. And that's if you're the Kings, you have to survive these tough patches in order to get to the soft spots. But there's like not a lot of soft spots left.
There's not, but like it all just comes back down to the Kings. Like you're a good team, you can compete with anyone. It's just it's up to them.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. So I'm not sure how it's going to play out, Jesse, but
They'll go 4-4. I bet you they go 5-4. I bet you they have it. It's a good stretch of games. I bet you. It's
okay.
just because it's just what they do.
Do you think they'll crack that top? Do you think that they can finish 5 or 6, or do you think they can get above that?
I think they can do 5-6 the rest of the season, going down the rest of the season. The top 4, that ship sailed when they didn't make a move at the trade deadline.
Hmm. Okay. So you believe that continuity is not like again, it's the question I asked Monty, which he kind of clapped back at. Like I used his own words, like the maintain and improve. Like I think that I thought they could maintain, but now I'm a little sketchy on whether they can maintain because I thought the vibe going into the second half last year was a lot better than the vibe going in this year.
For this season, it kind of makes me a little nervous, but I think broader picture, nothing's changed for me. I think you could still be the team you want to come the offseason if you make that move. Like for this season, sure, you didn't make a move. I don't know if you're getting out the first round. You're kind of scaring us a bit. You look like you might be a play-in team. But I think broader picture, like we get to the offseason, I think you could still make that move where it's like you didn't take any really steps back, bigger pictures. Just you need that bigger move where you get that third player or whatever it is that takes you to the next tier. So I think they're fine. Like as far as like, going forward, but as far as this season, yeah, it is a little worrisome, I guess.
Yeah, it's a little worrisome. Now, I'm going to ask the horrible question.
Uh-oh.
What's your confidence level that they avoid the play-in and maybe even avoid getting bounced out and not making the playoffs?
I'm gonna go above average confidence. I'm gonna go with 6. I I think they can beat a Dallas in the. I think they'll avoid. I don't know, James. This team. I can't even say this team gives me no confidence. I don't know. Ask them. Like they one day they look good, the next day they lose to the 6-win Pistons. I don't know. I'm trying, but it's like I also think they can't. Like I can see it going the other way.
You could see it just like complete.
I'm in the middle. I'm at a 5. I'm in the middle. It's like maybe I could see them going the other way where I'm at a 4.
Do you know?
Maybe it's a 6.
Do you know how catastrophic missing the playoffs would be?
It'd be horrible.
Not only for the confidence of the team, but the confidence of everything else. Like you could have knee-jerk reactions from ownership.
That's a definitive step back right there.
It's a definitive.
I don't want them to get into the play-in, but if you get into the play-in, you better get into the playoffs. Otherwise, we're gonna talk.
It's gonna be ugly.
Yes, that is not okay. I'll say this: not making the playoffs. Like you can finish at the end of the regular season 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. Get in the playoffs because if you don't, then that's the issue.
Okay, that's going to be like a huge issue.
Yes.
Well, which like it's an issue for a bunch of different reasons. Number one, like your fan base is going to be like angry, especially with what the Kings did to their ticket prices. Like what the Kings did with their ticket prices when they made the playoffs is like
it's a high price ticket now.
It's not realistic. Like, oh no. Like and if you're going to ask that, if you're going to want to give you want that to be the ticket price, then you got to do better than JaVale McGee, Chris Duarte, and Sasha Vezenkov as your off-season haul. And you got to do better than dumping, getting Robin Lopez and saving $1 million as your second pick at your trade deadline.
That's the thing, Monty. You didn't make any moves like at the trade deadline. That's fine. We get into the playoffs, cool. We don't get into the playoffs, like that's going to be a conversation that gets revisited. Where it's like, hey, maybe if Monty made a move or whatever, like that would have helped.
A year and a half, realistically, since he's made, like he hasn't made a move really since he signed Malik Monk and traded for Kevin Huerter and drafted Keegan Murray.
That was the last big impact ones, probably.
No, outside of that, yeah, that's it. Everything else is you already did. Like you can't say, well, we retained Harrison Barnes or we retained Trey Lyles. Is like, okay, those were already here. Like, what have you done? So I think it puts him in a really, really bad spot.
Well, there's pressure. You added some pressure from that question because now we got to talk and there's some pressure. I don't think anything crazy is gonna happen, but more so like make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, make the playoffs. And then I'll throw this in, Jesse. You know what happens if you don't make the playoffs?
What's that?
You have to use your 2024 draft pick, which means you don't have a war chest to deal with. Because as of right now, July 1st, they get all their picks back. So they have 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31. They've got 7 years worth of draft picks, which they can trade every other one. So they've got 4 separate. They could trade 4 picks in one deal. They've got all kinds of things that they can do. But if not, now your 25, 26, and 27 picks are still tied up. And you can't trade technically a pick until 28.
There's some stakes in the game here.
Yeah, and even the 28, you can trade 28 and 30, but you can't trade, or you can trade 29 and 31, but it's a mess. You go from having a war chest to not having much, being in the same exact position you are right now, right? So
because it's like it's like too, you didn't make the move, and it's like whether you make playoffs or not, it's like no matter what, the move does need to happen this offseason too. I think Damien has brought it up on D'Lo and Casey before. Like the move does need to happen now this coming offseason. I don't think we can wait any more longer.
Yeah, I would agree with you.